I'm Dr. Rajita, faculty of Next Fellow. Today's topic is on urethra, where we are going to discuss both male and female urethra. Urethra is clinically quite important topic because urinary catheterization is the most common procedure which is done through urethra. So, if we talk about male urethra first, male urethra it serves as a passage for urine and also to the semen, and it opens exteriorly, and it has the total length of around 18 to 20 centimeters, and it begins at the internal urethral orifice of the bladder, and where the detrusor muscle extends longitudinally into the prostatic part of the urethra and forms a complete collar around the neck of the urinary bladder called as internal urethral sphincter. So the detrusor muscle continues with the internal urethral sphincter which surrounds the prostatic part of urethra and forms a collar around this prostatic part of urethra. And the blue colored structure what you are seeing here is the prostate gland which is surrounding the initial part of urethra. So male urethra is mainly consists of three parts: prostatic part, membranous part and spongy part. So here is the prostatic part and this is the membranous part, and around here is the spongy part or bulbar part of urethra. Prostatic urethra courses through and it is surrounded by the prostate gland. So it is called prostatic urethra. Membranous urethra courses through the urinogenital diaphragm, that is the deep perineal pouch, and where it becomes related to deep transverse perineal muscles and sphincter urethrae muscle or external urethral sphincter. So here is the membranous part of urethra which traverses through the urinogenital diaphragm, that is through the deep perineal pouch, where on each side of the membranous part it is related to deep transverse perineal muscles, and also it is related to external urethral sphincter, that is sphincter urethrae muscle, external urethral sphincter, and both of which are like skeletal muscles and innervated by pudendal nerve. And lastly, the third part is the spongy part of urethra. Spongy part is further divided into bulbar part and penile part. The beginning is the bulbar part and the terminal part is the penile part of urethra. And bulbous spongious muscle, bulbosponges urethra courses through the bulb of the penis and develops from the endoderm as an outgrowth into the surrounding mesoderm to form bulbourethral glands or Cowper's glands. Whereas the penile urethra, it is called as cavernous part. Penile urethra is otherwise called as cavernous urethra and courses through it surrounded by corpus spongiosum. And distal part of the penile urethra courses through the glans penis and terminates at the navicular fossa at the external urethral orifice. So this is the navicular fossa where we can see the external urethral orifice. So this is just about the parts of urethra, male urethra. And parts of male urethra here, if we note the glands which are bulbourethral glands which develops as endodermal outpouches, and these glands if we see they are in relation to the membranous urethra. Actually they are present on each side of membranous urethra in the deep perineal pouch, that is in the urinogenital diaphragm. Whereas if you look at its ducts, the ducts are projecting downwards and where they are opening into the bulb of penis, bulbous part of urethra, where they are opening into the bulb of penis here on each side. So the duct opens into the bulbous spongy urethra in the superficial perineal pouch. So one thing to be noted here, the bulbourethral glands are located in the deep perineal pouch, but the ducts are opening into the in the superficial perineal pouch. And next about now talking about again individual parts, starting is the pre-prostatic part, which is called as intramural part of urethra. So the beginning, the initial part is around 0.5 to 1.5 centimeters, which is called prostatic part or intramural part, present within the wall of the urinary bladder and extends almost vertically through the neck of the bladder and surrounded by the internal urethral sphincter. And diameter and the length of this pre-prostatic part will vary depending upon the bladder is filling or emptying and so on. Next, about the prostatic part, which is now in the initial part, around 3 to 4 centimeters it would be. So the length of the prostatic part is 3 to 4 centimeters. It descends through the anterior prostate and forming like a gentle curve, which is anterior. The curvature is towards the anterior side within the prostate gland, and it is bounded anteriorly by the vertical trough like part called as rhabdosphincter of external urethral sphincter, which is the widest and most dilatable part. And we can see the urethral crust, the most important here. We can see the urethral crust, and internally we can see the colliculus seminalis, and which is where we can have an opening here in males called as prostate utricle and ejaculatory ducts. So these are the most important features what you can see in the prostatic part of urethra. So prostatic part of urethra, the important features are urethral crust with seminal colliculus and flanked by the prostate sinus, into which the prostatic ducts open, and also we can see the openings of ejaculatory ducts also within the colliculus seminalis. So hence the urinary and reproductive ducts open into the colliculus, and the urinary and reproductive tracts merge in this part actually. So that is the importance of this colliculus seminalis. And next, about the intermediate part or the membranous part of the urethra. Usually the length is around 1 to 1.5 centimeters, passes through the deep perineal pouch, piercing through the urogenital diaphragm, and it is surrounded by a circular membrane, and it is the narrowest and having a least distensible part except for the external urethral orifice. Except for its external urethral orifice, rest of the membranous part is the least distensible part, and it is the narrowest part of urethra. Next, about the spongy part. The spongy part and penile part are the two bulb parts, and the spongy is around 15 centimeters and courses through the corpus spongiosum. This is the spongy part which courses through the corpus spongiosum muscle, and initially it is. So the initial widened part of the spongy urethra, it courses through the bulb of penis, and the distally it gets again dilated, widened part as the navicular fossa. And in glans, which is located in the glans penis. Navicular fossa is located in the glans penis, whereas the beginning dilatation, it is located in the spongy part of urethra. And next, about the urethral glands. Urethral glands are the openings of bulbourethral glands is most important feature, which opens into the spongy part of urethra. Though we know the bulbourethral glands are located in the deep perineal pouch, they open into the superficial perineal pouch and opens into the small urethral lacunae, entering the lumen of this part. So these are the important features of each part of male urethra. The epithelium, the mucosal lining, differs from part to part because of its development. So first, about the prostatic part of urethra. Here the epithelium is transitional epithelium, which is the urothelium, which is similar to urinary bladder. And distal part of prostatic urethra and membranous urethra and major part of the penile urethra, it is lined by pseudostratified or stratified columnar epithelium. And distal most part, which is the distal penile urethra, which is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. So this is the thing. So here it is lined by urothelium or transitional epithelium, and the rest of the urethra pseudostratified or ciliated stratified columnar or pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And distal most part is near the urethral meatus, that is at the navicular fossa, where it is lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Next, coming to the female urethra, it is the length of the female urethra is very short. It is only of 4 centimeters long and begins at the internal urethral orifice of the urinary bladder. So here is the internal urethral orifice of the urinary bladder, where the detrusor muscle extends longitudinally into the urethra, and but does not form a significant internal urethral sphincter in females, and it courses through the urogenital diaphragm. We can see on each side urogenital diaphragm, and it courses through that is through the deep perineal pouch. We know the urogenital diaphragm is located in the deep perineal pouch, so it courses through the deep perineal pouch, and where it becomes related to deep transverse perineal muscle on each side. These are the deep transverse perineal muscle, and also the sphincter urethra. We can see the external, that is sphincter urethra. External sphincter urethra are related on each side. So that is about the female. As the female urethra is quite shorter, urinary tract infections are more common in females than in males. The posterior surface of the female urethra fuses with the anterior wall of vagina. Usually if you see this one, the posterior surface of female urethra, it fuses with the anterior wall of vagina such that the external urethral sphincter does not completely surround the female urethra. So the external urethral sphincter is not all around the female urethra, and it terminates in the navicular fossa at the external urethral orifice, which is situated between the labia minora. We can see the labia minora, further laterally labia majora, and posterior to the clitoris and anterior to the vaginal opening. So that is the opening of female urethra. So it is located in the navicular fossa at the external urethral orifice, where it is situated between the labia minora and in front of the vaginal opening and behind the glans clitoris. Next important thing to be noted in association with the urethra is attachment of Scarpa's fascia and Colles fascia. Scarpa's fascia is the membranous deep fascia of the abdomen, which continues as the Colles fascia of perineum. So we can see here the abdomen has two layers of fascia, that is superficial fascia. The outer fatty layer is the Camper's fascia. Camper's fascia is otherwise called fatty layer, which is mainly made up of fat, and the deep layer is the membranous layer, which is otherwise called as Scarpa's fascia. We can see the Scarpa's fascia is continuous in the perineum as the Colles fascia. So the attachment of these two layers, that is the Scarpa's and the Colles fascia, are such that they prevent the passage of extravasated urine. Suppose if there is any urethral rupture, the urine won't get extravasated. They prevent the passage of extravasated urine back into the ischiorectal fossa and downward into the thigh. So the urine cannot go towards the ischiorectal fossa unless this fascia is ruptured, and it won't allow the urine to extravasate into the thighs also. So the line of fusion of Scarpa's fascia, which is called as Holden's line, we can see here the membranous Scarpa's fascia. This is the line of fusion which separates the thigh from the abdomen anteriorly. So this line is called as Holden's line, and this attachment will be over the Holden's line, body of pubis and margins of pubic arch. That is how the Scarpa's fascia is attached. And posterior border of the perineal membrane or posterior edge of the urogenital diaphragm, it attaches posteriorly to the posterior margin of the urogenital diaphragm. Therefore, if male urethra, if it is ruptured in the perineum, the extravasated urine collects first in the superficial perineal pouch and then onto the anterior abdominal wall inferior to the umbilicus in the superficial inguinal space. In case of fundal rupture of urinary bladder, as may occur in bomb explosions, so what happens in that case? The peritoneum covering the fundus is also ruptured, leading to the extravasation of urine into the peritoneal cavity, causing ascites. So that is the importance of attachment of Colles fascia and Scarpa's fascia. Let's see some clinical aspects. The clinical aspects, uh, so rupture of membranous part of urethra, it can occur because of pelvic fractures. So the membranous part of the urethra, this is the prostatic part. Here is the membranous part which passes through the urogenital diaphragm. So in pelvic fractures may result in the pulling of puboprostatic ligaments and the rupture of membranous part of urethra. In this case, the urine escapes into the deep perineal space and can extravasate upwards into the perivesical space. So in this case, the urine will get extravasated into the deep perineal space and also can extravasate upwards into the perivesical space around the prostate and the bladder, So if there is associated rupture of perineal membrane, we see that the urine gets extravasated into the deep perineal space and also perivesical space if there is rupture of perineal membrane. In rupture of bulbous portion of urethra, so in case of straddle injury, there is a rupture of bulbous portion of urethra which is below the urogenital diaphragm. So here this is the bulbous portion of urethra. So if there is rupture here in this area, this is the membranous part of urethra, this is prostatic part of urethra. So, in this case, what happens? The spongy urethra below the urogenital diaphragm, it gets ruptured. The extravasated urine may pass into the superficial perineal space and spread inferiorly into the scrotum and anteriorly around the penis and superiorly into the lower part of the abdominal wall. So these are the areas where the urine get extravasated if there is a rupture at bulbous part. One thing to be noted, if there is rupture in the membranous part, we saw the extravasation of urine in the deep perineal pouch. Suppose if there is a rupture in the bulbar part of urethra, the extravasation is in the superficial perineal space and also the urine will get extravasated and spread inferiorly into the scrotum. So it goes into the scrotum down and also it anteriorly around the penis anteriorly and it extends into the inferior part of the abdominal wall, lower part of the abdominal wall below the umbilicus. Next about the penile fracture, that is penis is surrounded by a fascia. The deep fascia of the penis is called as Buck's fascia. So the Buck's fascia is continuous with the external spermatic fascia. Usually it is continuous with the external spermatic fascia in the scrotum and also it is and the suspensory ligament of penis, and on its ventral aspect it splits to envelop the corpus spongiosum. So ventral aspect, it splits to envelop the corpus spongiosum. So that is about the Buck's fascia. And in a separate compartment, it encloses the corpus spongiosum, which the compartment from the tunica albuginea and corporal bodies. So tunica albuginea and corporal bodies will surround. The Buck's fascia is here. So it encloses the corpora spongiosum in a separate compartment, and tunica albuginea, which is the layer covering the testis, so the and forms the deepermost part of the scrotum. So the tunica albuginea and also the corporal bodies are form this separate compartment. So the diagnosis of albuginal rupture is usually made from the characteristic history of severe pain with a cracking or a popping sound during the acute bend of erect penis. So when the penis is erect, if it gets fractured in erect posture, that case there will be a popping sound and a cracking kind of sound, and which indicates the albuginal rupture. So albuginal rupture is associated with the urethral injury in 10 to 20% of the cases, and penile hematoma is confined to the shaft when the Buck's fascia is intact. If the Buck's fascia has been violated, then the swelling and the ecchymiosis is also seen. Ecchymiosis means discoloration of the skin resulting from bleeding and underneath bleeding, and also typically caused by bruising, which are contained within the Colles fascia. So in this instance, a butterfly pattern ecchymiosis may be observed over the perineum, scrotum and lower abdominal wall. So butterfly shaped ecchymiosis is observed in the lower part of the perineum, scrotum and lower abdominal wall. So that is about the penile fracture, Buck's fascia, and also the albuginal rupture, which is associated with the ventral side of the Buck's fascia. So let's see some questions associated with the urethra. Bulbourethral glands open into which part of urethra? Membranous part, spongy part, prostatic part, intramural part or pre-prostatic part. I hope you all know bulbourethral glands are present in males in relation with the membranous urethra and in the deep perineal pouch, whereas the duct opens into the bulbospongy part of urethra. So the ducts are opening into the bulbospongy part of urethra and glands are located on each side of membranous urethra. So the answer here is the spongy part, bulbous spongy part of urethra, which is located in the superficial perineal pouch. The wrong statement about male urethra is the length is around 20 centimeters, membranous urethra is the shortest in length, and narrow lumen is at the external urethral meatus. Prostatic urethra is the widest, has the widest lumen. So which is the wrong statement here? So prostatic urethra, I have said it is the widest, it is the wrong. Male urethra, it is of total approximately 18 to 20 centimeters, so A is correct, and it is mainly divided into four parts, that is intramural part, which is pre-prostatic part, prostatic part, membranous part, and spongy, that is the spongy part and penile part. And next, the membranous urethra has the shortest length, that is around 1.5 centimeters. So B is also correct. The narrowest lumen is located at the external urethral meatus and the second narrowest lumen is in the membranous urethra. So the narrowest lumen is the external urethral meatus is also correct. Then the widest lumen is present in the bulbous part of penile urethra. So bulbous part of penile urethra contains the widest lumen and second widest lumen is the prostatic part of urethra. So the answer actually here, this is the second widest part, not the widest among all. So that is the reason the D is the correct answer in this question. So this completes the clinical aspects and normal anatomy of both male and female urethra. Thank you.